The massive space station hung in the darkness like a metal city. Kepler Station was the biggest structure humans had ever seen. It stretched for miles in every direction, with towers and domes that sparkled with alien lights. Ships from 12 different species docked at its ports. Some looked like giant insects made of metal. Others were smooth and curved like sea creatures. A few glowed with their own inner light. Admiral Jake Morrison walked through the corridors, with steady steps. His uniform was clean but showed signs of wear. 3 years of war had aged him. His hair was more gray than black now. Deep lines marked his face around his eyes. Behind him walked Captain Lisa Carter. She was younger, but her eyes held the same tired look that came from too many battles. The corridor walls were made of some alien material that changed color as they passed. Blue shifted to green, then to purple. Lisa had never gotten used to it. Everything about this place felt wrong. The air smelled different. The gravity was slightly too heavy. Even the sounds their boots made on the floor seemed muffled and strange. They passed groups of aliens in the hallways. Tall beings with 4 arms and silver skin ignored them completely. Small creatures that looked like walking plants chittered in languages that hurt human ears. A few stopped to stare at the humans with eyes that were too big, or too many in number. Lisa knew what they were thinking. Here were the representatives of a species that should have surrendered months ago. Earth had lost most of its colonies. The human fleet was down to less than 40 ships. Billions of people lived under alien occupation. Yet somehow these stubborn humans kept fighting. The main council chamber was enormous. The ceiling disappeared into shadows far above. 12 different sections housed the various alien species. Each area was designed for their specific needs. Some sections were filled with water. Others had different atmospheric mixes. Temperature and pressure varied throughout the room. At the center sat a raised platform where the negotiations would take place. Ambassador Veltar of the Hegemony Alliance was already waiting. His body was made of what looked like living crystal. Light passed through him in strange patterns. When he moved, the crystal pieces shifted and rearranged themselves. His voice came from a translator device that made it sound cold and mechanical. Jake took his seat across from the alien ambassador. Lisa sat beside him with her datapad ready. Around them, the various alien representatives watched from their environmental sections. Some floated in tanks of liquid. Others perched on structures that looked more like art than furniture. Veltar began without any greeting or ceremony. His crystal form pulsed with different colors as he spoke. The translator turned his words into flat, emotionless English. The terms he presented were not really negotiations. They were demands disguised as offers. First, humanity would withdraw from all contested star systems. That meant giving up 12 colonies that were still fighting. Millions of humans would be abandoned to alien rule. Second, all human military technology would be shared with the Hegemony Alliance. This included their quantum drive systems and weapon designs. Third, human space would be permanently limited to the Sol system and 3 nearby colonies. But the worst demand came last. Alien monitoring stations would be built throughout human space. These would watch everything humans did. They would control trade and travel. They would have the power to approve or deny any human expansion beyond their assigned boundaries. Lisa felt sick as she listened. These were not peace terms. They were the conditions of permanent slavery. The aliens were not offering to end the war. They were offering to make human defeat official and complete. Jake listened to everything without changing his expression. His hands remained folded on the table. He did not interrupt or ask questions. When Veltar finished speaking, the chamber fell silent. All eyes turned to the human admiral. The silence stretched for long minutes. Some of the alien observers began making sounds that might have been impatience. Others simply waited with the stillness that only non-human intelligence could maintain. Finally, Jake stood up. The movement was slow and deliberate. He gathered the papers in front of him and placed them in a neat stack. Lisa watched him with growing amazement. She had expected him to argue or negotiate, or at least ask for time to consider the terms. Instead, he turned toward the exit. His movements were calm and purposeful. Lisa quickly gathered her own materials and followed. Behind them, the alien observers began making various sounds of confusion and surprise. Veltar called out as they reached the chamber entrance. His crystal form flashed with rapid color changes that the translator could not interpret. When he spoke, his mechanical voice carried what might have been amusement. "Admiral Morrison, you cannot simply leave. Your species has no choice but to accept these terms. You have lost this war. Your fleet is broken. Your colonies are occupied. Your people suffer under our control. There is no other option for humanity except surrender." Jake stopped walking. He turned slowly to look back at the alien ambassador. His expression was completely calm, but something burned in his eyes. When he spoke, his voice carried clearly throughout the enormous chamber. "Watch us." The two words hung in the air like a challenge. Jake turned away again and walked out of the chamber. Lisa followed him into the corridor. Behind them, the aliens erupted into a chaos of sounds and movements. Translators chattered with a dozen different languages, all trying to process what had just happened. As they walked back through the changing corridors, Lisa finally found her voice. "Sir, what happens now? Earth Command is expecting us to return, with a signed agreement. The Council will be furious. They might decide to just destroy Earth instead of occupying it." Jake did not slow his pace. "Then we better give them a reason to think twice about that decision." They reached the docking bay where their small transport waited. The human crew stood at attention as their admiral approached. These men and women had served through 3 years of impossible odds. They had watched colonies fall and friends die, but they still stood ready to follow orders. As their ship pulled away from Kepler Station, Lisa looked back at the massive structure. Alien ships were already moving with increased activity. Communication signals filled the space around. The station, the entire galaxy, would know within hours that humanity had rejected the peace terms. "Sir," she said quietly, "we just declared war on 12 species that outnumber us 1,000 to 1. Jake stared ahead at the stars that marked the way home to human space. "No, Captain. We just declared that we would rather die free than live. As slaves. Now we find out if that choice means anything to the universe." The transport jumped to hyperspace, carrying its crew toward an uncertain future and a war that should have ended months ago, but somehow kept going because humans refused to accept the impossible. The human flagship, UNS Defiance, drifted through space like a wounded giant. Its hull showed the scars of dozens of battles. Laser burns marked the armor plating in long, dark streaks. Some sections had been patched with metal from other ships. The once bright blue paint was faded and chipped, but the ship still flew and its weapons still worked. Admiral Jake Morrison sat in the main briefing room surrounded by his senior officers. The room was cramped and poorly lit. Half the wall displays showed static or flickering images. The air recycling system made a constant humming noise that everyone had learned to ignore. This was what remained of Earth's grand space fleet, Captain. Lisa Carter stood beside a holographic display that showed the current state of human territory. Red zones marked areas under complete alien control. Yellow showed contested systems where fighting continued. The few remaining green areas looked pathetically small compared to the vast reaches of alien space. Commander Amy Rodriguez spoke first. She was a small woman with dark hair pulled back in a tight bun. Her uniform was clean but patched in several places. "Sir, the communication from Earth Command came through an hour ago. They want an immediate explanation for why the negotiations failed. The President is demanding answers." Jake nodded slowly. He had expected this reaction. Politicians always believed that any problem could be solved by talking. They did not understand that some enemies would never negotiate in good faith. "What did you tell them?" The truth, sir. That the aliens offered terms that would have made us permanent slaves. That accepting would have meant the end of human independence forever. Dr. Paul Fletcher cleared his throat. He was the ship's chief science officer and looked more like a professor than a military man. His gray hair was messy and his clothes were wrinkled, but his mind was one of the sharpest in human space. Admiral, we need to discuss the reality of our situation. Our fleet consists of 37 ships. The aliens control 600 worlds and have thousands of warships. In any conventional battle, we would be destroyed in minutes. Captain Steve Williams appeared on the main screen via communication link from his destroyer UNS Ranger. His ship was 3 systems away conducting reconnaissance missions. The signal was weak and filled with static. My crew is behind you, Admiral, but we need a plan that goes beyond just refusing to surrender. We cannot win this war by fighting the same way we have been fighting. Jake stood and walked to the display showing human colonies. Each dot of light represented millions of people. Some were already under alien occupation. Others were still free but surrounded by enemy forces. All of them were depending on the decisions made in this room. Dr. Fletcher, how is the Prometheus project coming along? Fletcher hesitated before answering. The theoretical framework is sound, Admiral. We have proven that quantum field manipulation is possible on a small scale, but scaling it up to be useful in combat would require resources we do not have. And the risks are enormous. What kind of risks? The kind that could destroy entire star systems if we make a mistake. We are talking about manipulating the fundamental forces that hold matter together. One calculation error could turn a planet into plasma. Lisa looked between the two men with growing concern. Sir, what exactly is the Prometheus project? This is the first time I have heard that name. Jake was quiet for a long moment. Outside the small window beside the briefing table, stars moved slowly past as the ship continued its patrol route. Each point of light might hold alien ships searching for the remaining human fleet. The Prometheus project is based on Dr. Fletcher's research into human consciousness and quantum mechanics. For the past year, he has been studying why humans seem to adapt faster than other species, why we can use alien technology better than they expected, why our strategies work even when they should not. Fletcher activated a display that showed complex mathematical equations and brain scan images. What we discovered is that human neural patterns operate on quantum frequencies that other species do not utilize. Our minds can actually influence probability at the subatomic level, not consciously, but as a natural result of how we think and feel. Amy stared at the display with confusion. Are you saying that humans have some kind of psychic powers? Not psychic, quantum. Every decision we make, every emotion we feel, sends ripples through quantum space. Most of the time, these effects are too small to notice, but under certain conditions with the right technology to amplify them, we might be able to directly influence physical reality. Steve's voice crackled through the communication system. That sounds like science fiction, Admiral. Even if it is true, how does it help us fight a war? Jake turned back to the star map. Because if Dr. Fletcher is right, then we have been thinking about this war all wrong. We have been trying to match their technology and their tactics. But what if our advantage is not in building better weapons, but in using consciousness itself as a weapon? The room fell silent as everyone tried to process this idea. Lisa finally spoke up. Sir, even if this is possible, we would need time to develop and test it. Time we do not have. Alien reinforcements arrive at human colonies every day. People are dying while we sit here talking about theoretical science. Which is why we are not going to wait for perfect conditions. Dr. Fletcher, how long would it take to set up a basic test of the quantum amplification system? Fletcher looked uncomfortable. Admiral, we have never attempted anything like this on a real scale. The prototype equipment exists, but using it could be extremely dangerous for anyone involved. We could be risking the lives of volunteers for something that might not work at all. Jake nodded grimly. Everything we do now risks lives, Doctor. The question is whether we risk them fighting a war we cannot win, or risk them trying something that might change everything. Captain Williams spoke again from his distant ship. Admiral, my sensors are picking up increased alien activity in this sector. It looks like they are massing forces for something big. We might not have much time to make this decision. Amy pulled up tactical displays showing alien fleet movements throughout human space. The patterns were clear to anyone with military training. Sir, they are positioning for a major offensive, probably aimed at Earth itself. If we are going to try this Prometheus project, it has to be soon. Jake looked around the room at the faces of his officers. These people had followed him through 3 years of fighting against impossible odds. They had lost friends and family and entire worlds. But they were still here, still willing to try one more impossible plan. Dr. Fletcher, begin immediate implementation of the Prometheus project. I want every available scientist working on quantum amplification equipment. Captain Carter, send a message to all human colonies, both occupied and free. Tell them we are not surrendering. Tell them why. Tell them that humanity chooses to fight for freedom no matter what the cost. As his officers dispersed to carry out their orders, Jake remained alone in the briefing room. Through the small window, Earth's sun was visible as a tiny point of light. 40 billion people lived around that star. All of them were counting on decisions made by a handful of humans aboard damaged ships scattered across the galaxy. The war was about to change in ways that no one could predict. The news spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. Every alien communication network carried the same impossible story. Humanity had rejected the peace terms. A species facing total destruction had chosen to continue fighting rather than accept surrender. In the great council chambers of a dozen different worlds, alien leaders struggled to understand what they had witnessed. On the crystalline world of Velneth, the Hegemony Alliance held an emergency session. Chancellor Zephron floated in his tank of liquid methane while his tentacles writhed with agitation. Around him, other Alliance members gathered in their various environmental chambers. The air filled with translated voices, all speaking at once. "This defies all logical analysis," Zephron declared through his translator. "No species has ever rejected council terms when facing such overwhelming disadvantage. Their continued resistance threatens the established order that has maintained galactic peace for 3,000 years. High Inquisitor Mardeth of the Divine Hierarchy spoke from her mechanical body. Her voice came through speakers that gave it an emotionless quality. "Our intelligence networks report unusual activity throughout human space. Fleet movements suggest they are consolidating their remaining forces near the Sol system. They appear to be planning something significant. But while alien leaders debated in their chambers, something remarkable was happening in the occupied territories." Captain Danny Cooper of the scout ship UNS Voyager moved carefully through the outer edges of the New Virginia system. His small vessel was designed for stealth and reconnaissance. It looked more like an asteroid than a spaceship. Danny had been documenting resistance activities on occupied human worlds for 2 months. What he found challenged everything the aliens thought they knew about human behavior. The colonies were not just surviving under occupation, they were growing stronger. On New Virginia, the alien occupation force had expected to find a broken population ready to accept their new rulers. Instead, they found networks of humans who seemed to operate without any central command. Information flowed between resistance cells faster than alien intelligence could track. Supplies moved through smuggling routes that changed daily. Most puzzling of all, humans were adapting to alien technology in ways that made no scientific sense. Marie Sullivan was a perfect example of this phenomenon. She had been a civilian engineer before the war started. Now she ran what humans called an underground railroad. Her job was helping human families escape from alien processing centers. These facilities were supposed to catalog and control the human population. Instead, they had become recruiting centers for the resistance. Marie worked from a hidden base, built inside an abandoned mining station. The tunnels stretched for miles underground, connecting to similar bases throughout the continent. Alien scanners could not detect the network because humans had learned to mask their technology signatures using techniques that should have been impossible. The trick is not to fight their systems, but to convince them that we are something else, Marie explained to a group of new volunteers. Alien technology is very advanced, but it makes assumptions about how intelligence works. When we do not fit those assumptions, their scanners get confused, she demonstrated by holding up a device that looked like a simple radio. This communicator uses quantum encryption that our scientists developed by studying captured alien equipment. But instead of copying their methods, we found ways to make it work better. The aliens cannot intercept our signals because their computers do not recognize them as communications at all. Back aboard the UNS Voyager, Danny Cooper compiled his reports with growing amazement. Every human colony showed the same pattern: resistance movements that operated more like living organisms than military units. Technology that evolved and improved faster than alien intelligence could analyze. Most important of all, a population that refused to accept defeat even when facing impossible odds. His data reached Dr. Paul Fletcher aboard the UNS Defiance at the same time that Fletcher's team made their most important discovery. The quantum resonance patterns they had been studying were not just theoretical concepts. They were discovering that human consciousness itself operated on frequencies that alien technology could not properly detect or interpret. "Admiral, this changes everything," Fletcher reported to Jake Morrison in the ship's laboratory. The room was filled with strange equipment that hummed and sparked with energy. "We have been assuming that consciousness is a product of biology, but our research suggests that biology might be a product of consciousness instead." Jake studied the displays, showing brainwave patterns and quantum field measurements. The mathematics were beyond his understanding, but the implications were clear. "Are you saying that human thoughts can directly affect physical reality?" "Not exactly thoughts, Admiral, but the quantum patterns that underlie human consciousness. Every decision we make, every emotion we feel, creates ripples in quantum space. Most species process information in linear patterns that follow predictable rules, but humans process information in quantum superposition states. We can hold contradictory ideas at the same time and somehow make them both true." Fletcher activated a demonstration device that looked like a metal sphere surrounded by spinning rings. "Watch what happens when I focus my attention on this quantum field generator." As Fletcher concentrated on the device, it began to glow with soft blue light. The spinning rings moved faster, and energy readings on nearby instruments increased dramatically. But when Fletcher stopped concentrating, the device returned to normal operation levels. "The amplification effect is real, Admiral. Human consciousness can directly influence quantum probability fields. With the right equipment, we might be able to scale this effect up to useful levels." Jake felt something that might have been hope for the first time in months. "How long until we can test this on a larger scale?" "The prototype quantum amplifiers are almost ready. But Admiral, there is something else you need to know. The resistance reports from occupied colonies show that humans are already doing this instinctively. They are adapting to alien technology, not by understanding it, but by unconsciously influencing it to work the way they expect it to work." On distant Kepler station, Ambassador Veltar received reports that made his crystalline form pulse with confused colors. Human resistance movements were displaying capabilities that violated known laws of physics. Their technology was evolving faster than his scientists could analyze. Most disturbing of all, humans seemed to be getting stronger under pressure rather than weaker. He opened a communication channel to the Alliance fleet commanders. "Initiate Protocol 7. Begin immediate mobilization of all available forces. The human problem must be resolved before it spreads to other species." Across the galaxy, alien fleets began moving toward human space. Thousands of ships from dozens of species converged on the Sol system. They came expecting to end a small rebellion. quickly and efficiently. They had no idea that they were about to encounter something that would challenge their understanding of consciousness itself. In his laboratory aboard the UNS Defiance, Dr. Fletcher made final adjustments to equipment that would either save humanity or destroy it completely. The Prometheus project was ready for its first real test. Within days, they would discover whether human consciousness was powerful enough to change the outcome of an impossible war. 3 weeks had passed since humanity walked away from the peace talks. The galaxy held its breath as the largest military force in recorded history assembled near the edge of human space. Task force overwhelming stretched across light years of empty space. 7,000 alien warships from 12 different species moved in perfect formation toward the Sol system. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UNS Defiance, watching the approaching fleet through long-range sensors. The alien armada looked like a moving constellation of deadly stars. Each ship was larger and more powerful than anything humanity had ever built. Together, they represented enough firepower to turn entire planets into dust. Behind Morrison, the bridge crew worked at their stations with quiet efficiency. These men and women had served through 3 years of impossible battles. They had watched friends die and colonies fall, but none of them showed fear as they prepared for what might be their final fight. "Sir, the alien vanguard is entering the outer system," reported Captain Nicole Baker from her position aboard the UNS Liberty. Her ship was hidden among the asteroids between Mars and Jupiter. "They are maintaining standard formation protocols, exactly as our computer models predicted." Morrison nodded grimly. For the past 3 weeks, human scientists had studied every piece of data about alien military tactics. Dr. Paul Fletcher and his team had worked around the clock to understand how their enemies thought and fought. What they discovered gave humanity its only chance of survival. "All ships report ready, Admiral," called out Communications Officer Ben Hayes from his station. "The quantum resonance network is online and functioning within normal parameters." Morrison looked around the bridge one last time. 37 human ships faced 7,000 alien vessels. In any conventional battle, the outcome would be decided in minutes. But this would not be a conventional battle. Humanity was about to test a weapon that existed only in theory until 3 weeks ago. "Begin Phase 1, Morrison ordered. Throughout, the solar system hidden devices came online. Engineer Tony Grant had spent weeks placing quantum resonators at key points around every planet and major asteroid. These machines did not look like weapons. They resembled communication arrays or scientific instruments. The aliens would detect them eventually, but by then it would be too late. The resonators were not designed to fire energy beams or launch missiles. Instead, they amplified and focused human thought patterns across vast distances. Every human in the solar system became part of a network that connected their consciousness through quantum space. 40 billion minds began working together in ways that had never been attempted before. Dr. Fletcher monitored the process from his laboratory aboard the Defiance. Screens showed energy readings that climbed higher than his instruments were designed to measure. "Admiral, the quantum field coherence is approaching critical levels. We are entering uncharted territory. Any signs that the aliens have detected what we are doing?" "Negative, sir. Their scanners cannot identify quantum consciousness patterns. To them, we just look like a small fleet waiting to be destroyed." The alien fleet continued its approach with mechanical precision. Council Admiral Kethmore commanded the operation. From his massive flagship, the vessel was 3 miles long and carried enough weapons to level a continent. Around him, officers from different species coordinated the final assault on human space. "Target acquisition complete," reported the tactical officer through his translation device. "Human fleet positions confirmed. Estimated time to total victory is 12 minutes. Kethmore felt satisfaction flow through his body chemistry. This rebellion had lasted far longer than it should have. Bringing it to an end would restore proper order to the galaxy. Other species would remember what happened to those who defied Council authority. But as the alien fleet entered the inner solar system, something impossible began to happen. Space itself started behaving differently around the human ships. Physical laws that had remained constant for billions of years began to shift in subtle but crucial ways. Commander Amy Rodriguez watched her instruments with amazement. "Sir, the alien targeting systems are experiencing cascading failures. Their computers cannot lock onto our ships even though we are in plain sight. The quantum resonators hidden throughout the system were working exactly as Dr. Fletcher had hoped. Human consciousness focused through the network was directly influencing the probability fields that governed how matter and energy interacted. Alien weapons found themselves unable to fire. Navigation systems gave contradictory readings. Communication arrays broadcast static instead of orders. This is impossible, Admiral Kethmore declared as his flagship's main weapons array went offline. For the third time in 5 minutes, what kind of species can manipulate fundamental forces through mere thought patterns? His science officer tried to provide an explanation. "Sir, our analysis suggests that human neural activity operates on quantum frequencies we have never encountered. They appear to be directly altering the probability matrices that control physical interactions." Throughout the alien fleet, similar problems multiplied rapidly. Ships that had functioned perfectly for centuries suddenly found their most basic. Systems failing. Engines shut down without warning. Shields collapsed for no detectable reason. Weapons turned inert despite showing full power readings. The human fleet moved through the chaos like ghosts. Their ships suffered no technical failures because their crews were part of the quantum consciousness network. Human minds working in harmony were rewriting the rules of physics in the space around them. Captain Steve Williams aboard the UNS Ranger led a squadron of destroyers through the confused alien formation. "Admiral, this is incredible. Their ships are completely helpless. We could destroy their entire fleet without taking a single casualty." But Morrison had different orders. "Negative, Captain. Disable their vessels, but do not fire on helpless enemies. Begin rescue operations for any crews in distress." This decision shocked both human and alien observers. Instead of pressing their impossible advantage, humanity began saving the lives of their enemies. Human rescue ships moved through the disabled, alien fleet offering medical aid and emergency supplies. Admiral Kethmore found himself trapped aboard a ship that no longer responded to any commands. Around him, his crew struggled with technology that had turned against them. When human vessels approached offering assistance, he faced a choice no military commander had ever encountered. "Sir, the humans are requesting permission to evacuate our crew to safety," his communication officer reported. "They claim our life support systems are failing and want to prevent casualties." Kethmore looked at his instrument displays, showing air quality dropping and power systems shutting down. His ship was dying around him, and his ancient enemy was offering to save his life. The age of conventional warfare was ending. Humanity had introduced something entirely new to galactic conflict. They had proven that consciousness itself could be the ultimate weapon. But instead of using it for conquest, they chose to use it for salvation. 6 months after what historians would call the Consciousness War, the galaxy was a different place. The Great Council chambers on Kepler Station had been rebuilt to accommodate a new kind of meeting. For the first time in 3,000 years, alien leaders sat as equals rather than rulers discussing terms with a species they could not understand or control. Admiral Jake Morrison walked through the same corridors he had left in defiance half a year before. But everything had changed. The walls no longer shifted colors in patterns designed to confuse human senses. The gravity had been adjusted to Earth normal. Even the air smelled cleaner and more familiar. Behind him walked Dr. Paul Fletcher carrying data pads filled with research that would reshape galactic science. Captain Lisa Carter accompanied them along with the new Federation diplomatic team. They were no longer representatives of a defeated species begging for mercy. They came as equals, offering partnership in exploring the universe. Ambassador Veltar waited in the main chamber, but his crystalline form showed colors that had never been recorded before. His species had spent months trying to understand what they had witnessed during the battle at Sol. Their greatest scientists could measure the quantum effects, but could not explain how human consciousness achieved them. Admiral Morrison, Veltar said through his translator, "We must confess that your species has presented us with questions we never thought to ask. Our understanding of consciousness and reality itself has been fundamentally challenged." Jake took his seat at the negotiation table. This time, the terms being discussed were very different. Instead of surrender, humanity was offering to share certain insights about consciousness and quantum mechanics. In exchange, the Galactic Council would provide access to their vast knowledge of stellar engineering and resource management. Dr. Ellen Murphy spoke for the Federation Diplomatic Corps. She was a specialist in alien psychology who had spent years studying how different species communicated. "We are not interested in ruling the galaxy or being ruled by it. We want to explore what becomes possible when different forms of consciousness work together instead of trying to dominate each other." The alien representatives listened with attention that bordered on fascination. High Inquisitor Mardith of the Divine Hierarchy had upgraded her mechanical body with new sensors designed to detect quantum consciousness patterns. She still could not fully measure human mental activity, but she could at least recognize when it was happening. "The implications of your abilities extend far beyond military applications," she stated. "If consciousness can directly influence physical reality, then every assumption we have made about the nature of existence requires examination." Chancellor Zephyron floated in his methane tank while his tentacles moved in patterns that expressed deep thought. "Our species has explored the galaxy for millennia, believing that technology was the ultimate tool for understanding the universe. You have shown us that consciousness itself might be more fundamental than the physical laws we thought were absolute." Jake exchanged glances with Dr. Fletcher before responding. "Maybe the problem has been thinking about consciousness as something separate from the universe instead of recognizing it as the force that shapes reality. Humans do not just observe the world around us. We participate in creating it through every choice we make and every dream we imagine." Fletcher activated displays showing the research data that had emerged from studying the battle at Sol. "What we discovered is that reality is far more flexible than any species previously understood. When consciousness operates in quantum superposition, states it can influence probability fields at the subatomic level. Most species process information in linear patterns, but humans naturally think in quantum states." The presentation continued for hours as human scientists shared their findings with alien researchers who had studied consciousness for thousands of years. The exchange of knowledge flowed in both directions. Alien technology could amplify and focus human quantum effects in ways that neither species could achieve alone. Captain Peter Johnson appeared on the main display from the bridge of the UNS Explorer. His ship was currently 300 light-years away, conducting the first joint human-alien research mission. "Admiral, we have discovered something remarkable in the Vega system. The combination of human intuition and alien analytical technology has allowed us to detect patterns in stellar formation that neither of our species noticed before." The implications were staggering. Human consciousness could perceive possibilities that alien logic missed, but alien technology could measure and analyze those possibilities in ways that human intuition alone could not achieve. Together, they were discovering aspects of the universe that had remained hidden for billions of years. Back on Earth, engineer Marie Sullivan continued her work, but now she collaborated with alien scientists who wanted to understand human innovation. Her underground railroad had evolved into a cultural exchange program. Humans and aliens worked side by side, learning from each other's approaches to problem solving. "The strangest thing is how natural it feels," she reported during a video conference. with the diplomatic team. Alien technology works better when humans use it, but not because we understand it better. It works better because we expect it to work better. Somehow our belief becomes reality. The negotiations concluded with agreements that would reshape galactic civilization. Humanity gained full membership in the Galactic Council not through conquest or submission, but by demonstrating capabilities that enriched everyone. Joint research stations would be established throughout human and alien space. Cultural exchange programs would allow different species to learn from each other's approaches to consciousness and reality. But the most important change was philosophical. The age of purely technological advancement was ending. The galaxy was entering an era where consciousness itself was recognized as the ultimate frontier. Species that had spent millennia perfecting their technology were now learning to expand their awareness. Admiral Morrison stood in the observation deck of Kepler Station, looking out at ships from dozens of different species. Human vessels flew alongside alien craft in formations that would have been impossible 6 months before. The war was over, but the exploration was just beginning. Captain Danny Cooper sent regular reports from colonies throughout human space. Everywhere he went, he found humans and aliens working together on projects that neither species could have imagined alone. Art installations that existed in quantum superposition states, musical compositions that used consciousness itself as an instrument, scientific experiments that required both human intuition and alien precision. The galaxy had expected humanity to submit or die. Instead, they had introduced an entirely new way of existing among the stars. Consciousness was no longer considered a byproduct of biological evolution. It was recognized as the creative force that shaped reality itself. And in research laboratories throughout known space, humans and aliens continued discovering that the universe was far stranger and more wonderful than anyone had previously imagined. The age of conscious cooperation had begun, and with it came possibilities that stretched beyond the limits of any single species' imagination.